What's up?
I think we're live.
Oh my God.
Welcome back after a week off, so Morgan could go juggle with some of the best in the world.
Club Congress. Very cool. If you get a chance, go learn something new and surround yourself with people who know more about stuff than you do. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. That's a very NLP attitude all by itself.
Yep.
How was the juggling?
Living in NLP was amazing. It's in the juggling world, there's like these juggling festivals where everybody goes and learns and does stuff, and it's all kinds of crazy shit and workshops. But this is is the first of its kind of a very prop specific, like juggling props, club congress, and all these people who do other things. And in this location where it is, they build other things that are other props. But for this, it's only clubs. Only clubs. You're only allowed to have clubs. And it's like, if that's not a club, it needs to get out of the fucking building. And it's really just like, wow. Everybody's there for one specific thing for 4 days. And it's workshops and it's all this stuff. And, the world-class people come, and I'm the worst. Not only am I the oldest, but I'm the worst. And I don't give a shit. They don't give a shit, but I'm learning and growing and doing. And you just get better being in a room with people who are all doing the same stuff. And like, even like seminars and stuff like that. Everybody's in the same vibe. We're all doing it here for the same purpose. We're all supporting each other. There's no like, everybody's just doing the thing. It was really awesome.
So you mentioned it was just interesting to be in the room with some of the people who are literally the best in the world at what they do.
World-class people. Like, you trip out, like, holy shit. And next year, like, the guest is going to be one of the best jugglers, club jugglers in the world. Like, he's like number one for the last 10 years. It's like, to be around people who are that good at something. Yeah. It's funny because it's like with anything, like whether it's a magic trick or cardistry or whatever. Like
Hypnosis.
Hypnosis, exactly. I was telling somebody at the thing, it's like, you look at a guy doing a thing, because it's not just throwing things, it's a lot of other things go on with it. But you look at it and you see somebody do a thing and you go, oh, that's what 10 years looks like. Whatever it is, whether it's any kind of thing that looks effortless, it's full unconscious. You got to do it. I think it was Penn who said there's no magic. It's just someone with no social life who's willing to practice shit over and over again until it looks like magic. Yeah. Can you hear that saw, whatever that is? Okay, good. So yeah, it was nice to surround myself with people like that. And I will say this, I made it a point because I love it. I love having the guy who puts it on, his shit's together, the people whose place it is, their shit is together. But a lot of the rest of the community of flow is very flowy. They're very hippie and very going with the flow, and that's all good. And when you show up as like, hey, what can I do? And then when they tell you, you do it. And then you do some more stuff. And then you're like, hey, and you show up on time and you do the things. That's like superpowers. And so all of a sudden I was like, dude, let me do what I can do. And I did whatever little things I could do that I was too glad to do for free, because I'm just let me help and support. Yeah. And they were like, wow, it was great. I was like, dude, I didn't do anything. Let me do stuff. Just point me in a direction, because I love this. I love doing stuff and making the party happen. I love it and let loose, but there has to be a party. Like, I was always the guy at the party going, hey guys, if you stop yelling, we can party all night long. But if you keep partying this way, the cops are going to come. It's balance, which we talked about earlier with Kobe Bryant, right? You can party too hard, but then the party's going to end. Or you can be super dedicated, and then we can talk about that if you want.
Well, I wanted to ask, before we go on to that subject, one last thing about the juggling. Sure. When I think about the juggling, to me, I see so many metaphors. Yeah. Like the experience. I'll share one very quickly. I remember somebody talking about Zen and this idea that through the dedication to the achievement of perfection of anything, you eventually reach a point where the only thing left to work on is you. that perception is projection, that it's not about the juggling anymore, or like the Zen practices of like calligraphy or tea ceremony. I love tea ceremony.
Yeah, right.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what is that? What's the point of trying to perfect? Exactly. Yeah. But the point is the perfecting of anything, and the kind of uselessness of a tea ceremony sort of appeals to the idea of like, this is intangible. And the point is you're honing yourself at a certain point. Right. So I think of juggling as a beautiful example of that. And I imagine there are a ton of other metaphors. Like one we shared was just like, every time you start juggling, at some point you're going to drop something. Like you can't juggle forever. So there's no failure. There's only feedback. What are some of your other favorite metaphors from juggling?
Oh, I mean, it's, as far as metaphors, just experiences, it's getting better at something. Like the amount of times that I go, oh, I'm better at that today than I was yesterday. Yeah. That is, that's a real important part of it for me. Of like, oh, I put in the work, I do the thing, I get it done. It's meditation through movement. Right. Movitation. Mediment. It is, you know, humbling. And I heard some people say at this thing, like, how fucking humbling all of this shit is. And these are the good guys going, God, it's so fucking humbling to be here. Because you see this guy, like, oh my God, that's what 20 years looks like. Plus he's super talented and he's got the right body. And you know, just like, oh my God. Dedication, fun. Pointlessness. There's no fucking point to this. It's not going to do anything. I think about that one a lot, but it's like, what are you juggling? Like there's a metaphor for life in there that like, what is all this? Why are you taking it so seriously? Right. I mean, then you hear people say, well, I'm juggling so many things, but do you juggle? Oh no. Well, maybe if you juggle, you'd be better at juggling all the other things. Exactly. Right? And really the almost the sort of pointlessness of art, I guess you could say, or dance or whatever. Like it's, and now that you can film it, it's still there, but it's like, what about all the people who sang all the songs and danced all the dances before you could record it? You know, that was the real shit, because it was just there. Yeah. It was just happening. And then that was it. And then hopefully someone remembered it and sang it again. But like, it wasn't like, now it's, if you didn't record it, it didn't happen. So what happened in the past? Did it happen? It didn't exist. Right. There's just so much of learning and growth and flow and balance and contact and manipulation. Surrender to the unconscious is another one I think about a lot. But you can't concentrate on all these things at once. And the truth is, the more you try to concentrate on anything, the worse you're going to be at it. Like, I mean, there's 3 clubs. Cool. I'm learning some stuff with 3 clubs. Great. You want to frustrate yourself? Learn it with 3 clubs. Or put one of the clubs down. Learn the trick with 2 clubs. And you really want to go nuts. I juggled 2 clubs for like a year, just so I could know what they felt like. I'll juggle 1 club and just do like to really get to know the one thing before you start the other thing, the next thing. Like just simplify, master what you can, then add in bits, whatever that is. What am I talking about? I'm talking about anything, right? Which exactly. It's a great metaphor. Right. And just putting time in, using your body, which is your unconscious mind. You know. So for the folks who are listening, let's very overtly transition this over and say everything Morgan just said can be applied to learning anything, including mastering NLP and hypnosis. How do you break down the skills and tools and techniques that you want to master into bite-sized chunks and in a sense consciously make it frustrating? Like make the smallest little bit that you're just like, go out every day and do 1 Milton model pattern, or annoy as many people as you can by asking the same meta model question over and over and listen for the language pattern as a response. Go out and reframe, although reframing is in my opinion too big. That's like juggling 3 clubs. Make it smaller than that. Like notice the language patterns that are reframable. That's one juggle. Little rapport thing. To get into all the fucking techniques or whatever. Just like actually sensory acuity. Sensory acuity is so foundational. Notice
Pupil dilation. Like that's one that I know so many people don't even believe is real. They don't even think it's possible to actually notice pupil dilation. Well, have you spent a week staring at people's pupils until you notice a shift?
I don't know if your cat does this, but my cat, when it's excited, like it'll sit there and it's like doing whatever. And I'll shake the thing and his eyeballs go, whoa. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, he's got big eyes.
That's called arousal.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. And you can tell. I'm like, no, he's not into it. Now he's into it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely a metaphor for everything.
Yeah. We can talk about the Kobe thing if you want. This is a follow-up on last week's, 2 weeks ago. We had it was the day after, the day it happened.
Yeah, or the day after.
Happened. Yeah. And so you were wearing the jersey.
I'm a fan, and from LA, Lakers, all that stuff. Watched every game, and it was devastating because you think, oh shit! I thought this helicopter. He was flying it from Irvine to Calabasas, and the fog came out of nowhere, and the engine went, and they dropped out of the sky. And I left it at that because I don't really have time to focus too much on sports with or without him, let alone tragedies. And then a couple weeks later, one of my clients told me, and this is all, I heard from a client that they heard on the news that they went from Irvine and they ended up going to Glendale because it was so freaking foggy where they were trying to go because they couldn't go there. And they ended up circling Glendale for 45 minutes. And I was like, what? And then somehow they asked the tower, can you guide us up to the thing? And they're like, no, we can't see you. That's the point. And yet somehow they ended up forcing it and trying to do something that they shouldn't have done to just be dedicated and go, and all died. And I thought to myself that that go-get-itness, the never say die, the fucking I will conquer this attitude, which makes Kobe Bryant such a hero because he died. I'm like, what can I take from Kobe? Holy shit. Right. You watch some documentary on him, you're like, that motherfucker was dedicated as hell. Yeah. He was working, he believed, all that stuff. And at the same time, his never say die attitude essentially killed him and his family. And, we talked briefly about, you can probably talk about the balance that needs to happen. Yeah. Where I'm so far into, I would never do that. I would never say, let's all go driving with our eyes closed in the canyon. It's that's not what I would do because I believe in myself. So what is that?
NLP to me at the higher levels of understanding parallels very well with a lot of spiritual principles to me. And the idea of balance, the idea that anything is valuable in the right context, and conversely, everything is useless in the wrong context.
Yeah, or worse than useless.
Yeah, dangerous and even deadly. And his go get him, I'm going to fucking make it happen no matter what attitude. We live in a culture that deifies that idea and that energy. And from my perspective, that's the yang side of yin and yang. Sometimes you need to learn to be able to surrender and say, oh, yep, okay, I give up. I'm going to go back to my mansion and hang out with my kid and we'll go play in my indoor fucking basketball.
It's basketball practice. You know what I mean?
Right. So, instead of go land this plane or this helicopter no matter what. And obviously we don't really know what
I'm
happened
assuming
that
the captain didn't just go, I'm taking you into this fog bank, Kobe Bryant. But
right.
I'm pretty sure Kobe was get me to practice, man.
Yeah. But there's lessons to be taken from everything. And even if, I guess this is an NLP principle, even if this has nothing to do with what actually happened, it's still a valuable lesson to go there.
I was definitely used with my clients all the time because whatever the thing is, that's the problem is actually a good thing. We talk about this all the time. Taking too far.
Yes.
Just whatever it is, I want to be good turns into perfectionism, which turns into paralysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought you mentioned that. I didn't even know that part of the story, but I thought it was such a good follow-up on what we talked about last time.
And it's not to take away from whatever, but it's would he, if you asked him now, probably, yeah, but if you said, Kobe Bryant, would you take 3 less championships, but you'll actually live past 41? well, but you'll be that less dedicated and that less motivated and that less of a legendary hero. Like, or this thing.
What's so funny to me is I honestly wonder if he would say, no, I would rather burn out as a firework at 41. But then you say, well, what about your daughter? Would you sacrifice your daughter for 3 championship,
So it's just to see. So that's actually had me more like, because I thought about it, the original thing is like really sad and it's too bad. Now I'm like, oh God, like, wow, what a great learning, not only that he's a hero and he can have these strengths, but that they too can also be something that takes you out.
Yes. Yeah.
So live your life, but don't live it too hard.
Okay.
And if you do live it too hard, don't take your kids with you.
On that note, you want to transition into our standard show here?
Yes.
So anecdotes first, right?
Yes, sir. You give me yours, and I'm going to close this window.
I think you went first last time, so go ahead. So I'll go first this time.
Yeah. Go.
Do you need to go close the window?
I think with the way this is set up, when you talk, you're on the screen, so I could be doing whatever I'm doing when you're talking.
No, I have it set side by side right now.
Oh, I mean, is that how I was recording? Because I don't think that's how I see it.
The last couple of them.
Behind the scenes, guys. I know you want to know.
Yeah. The last couple of them, I didn't realize that whoever's streaming it, the way your screen is set up, that's how it's going to appear on Facebook.
Right.
So I had it on speaker view the last few times.
Okay.
So now I set it side by side because I think I like it better.
Okay. Well, then you talk. I'm still going to close this window.
Go. Who gives a shit?
Right. Nobody cares.
Can you hear me while you're gone?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So my anecdote is not exactly a continuation of the last one, but it is personal. And it's about, so last time I was talking about these profound breakthroughs I had in my family because my dad came down to visit and we had all these conversations. This week, one of the most significant things that happened is, so my wife has been estranged from her mother for a number of years. She had a very troubled childhood. Her mom was very abusive physically and emotionally. And she cut her out of her life about 6 years ago. She tried to do a bunch of therapy with her. She was resistant, kicking and screaming the whole way. And her mom was just like not willing to take feedback on anything about anything. So she finally put her foot down and said, I can't deal with this. Every time you talk to me, you stress me out and throw my entire week off. So unless you're willing to open up to feedback and actually work on our relationship, then I'm not going to talk to you. So they didn't talk for over 5 years. And then in December, she reached out and said, I want to reconnect and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And that was really encouraging. So Liz found a coach and a therapist who specializes in mother-daughter relationships. They started working together, and since early December-ish, they've been meeting on an almost weekly basis, and things have been seemingly going pretty well. And then this week, out of the blue, the coach reaches out to her and says, your mother contacted me and says she doesn't want to do this anymore, and she's done. And it kind of threw Liz for a loop because she felt like, I think that she had just started to get her hopes up again. Like, oh, maybe I can actually have a real relationship with my mother. And then she pulls it out from under her, which is a classic thing. But I think that was like the last vestiges of, oh, I'm going to let go of the need for this at all.
Nice.
But the thing that it led me to, the point, the lesson that I wanted to discuss, and this is not even so much an anecdote, it's more of a discussion I wanted to have with you, is you can't make people change. No matter how fucking behaviorally flexible that you are, no matter how persuasive, no matter how much NLP or hypnosis, whatever kind of Jedi, Kung Fu, whatever that you are, you can't make people change. Yeah. Even with a gun.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a example of that. I mean, obviously that's true in so many places, in so many ways, but I've had one in a business way. recently. I had a client. Well, I have a client who says, "Oh, my husband, you need to help him quit smoking." I was like, "Okay, cool." And I really like my client, the woman, and I didn't do a good enough job making sure that this motherfucker was ready. So I go to the house.
There.
We start talking about stuff. We do the things. He's been smoking a pack a day since he was, 10. He's French. It's just how they are. And he's a stay-home dad who sits and smokes in front of his young children. And it's all really, and I'm just like, I wanted so bad for her to help him and all this stuff. And I should have known early the signs were there, but I really wanted it for her. I wanted to, be of service and show her how awesome all these things are that I do for people who are ready. And we do all this stuff. And at the end of it all, we just try to do some MER. It's like banging against the wall. We try to do some release work. It's just like, whatever. Finally, we did some MER. We went back and he's like very cerebral about it. Oh, yeah, I didn't realize how angry I am. And oh, yeah, I tried this time with my mom and like past lives, which you didn't even believe in or think about. But it's like, oh, yeah, it goes back to there. Okay, all the way come back to now. Boom. How you doing? He's like, I want a cigarette. I'm like, okay, great. This is on me. I cannot change. Like with all the tricks, I was like, pew, 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 pew. And he's like, yeah, whatever, man. It's just stuff. It's just stuff until someone's willing to receive it. And it was a big lesson for me that like, make sure they're ready and that they are fully engaged, fully involved and saying, help me. I need this, because if not, and this is, beginning NL people. Yeah. Stop trying to fuck with people if they don't want to be fucked with. Yeah. That's so annoying. We've all had it. I know I did. I'm sure you did. We're like, you hear somebody say, we're doing, oh, did you know this? And then here's some NLP. And like, even my friend who I sent to TEP, I was like, oh, you should check this out. It's great. He came back from that and he's like, I think I'm annoying my friends because I'm trying to change them all. And you can't change anybody. So it's a good point, my friend. Yeah. Even if you love them, even if you want them to, There's
an interesting, there's some paradoxical ideas in here within NLP, because we do have this idea that with enough behavioral flexibility, you can get anybody to do anything. And we also have, how do I put this? I read a book on cognitive dissonance called Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me.
Yeah, it's
really good book. And at the end of the book, they talk about this thing called the closed feedback loop, the closed therapeutic loop. And what it basically says is that I have a technique and it works 100% of the time. If you come and see me and it works, that validates that my technique, it works 100% of the time. But if person B comes and sees me and they don't get the result, well, you didn't want it enough. You weren't following the process. You were resisting the techniques. If you had gone along with what I was telling you to do, it would have worked. And that is a problem, because then you can sit there in your ivory tower with your perfect techniques where no feedback, where it turns out that realistically 60% of the people that come and see you, or 40% of the people that come and see you, actually don't get the result, but you blame them instead of taking responsibility and modifying your tools and techniques. And yet at the same time, the other side of that paradox is that if somebody really doesn't fucking want to change, there is no force on earth that will make it happen. Yeah. And that is a paradox if you ever look at one.
Yeah. And I hadn't actually seen one. I mean, obviously I'm sure I could look in the mirror and find a couple myself, but like I hadn't actually seen a guy who knows he's killing himself, who has a perfect life, with beautiful kids, who's sick of this shit, but he's not that sick. And he's like, man, I'm not ready. I don't want it. I don't want to change. I'm like, okay, well, I can't change you. And I think that's so much of what we end up having to tell people with hypnosis or NLP. I'm not going to take over your mind. I'm not going to brainwash you. I'm not going to make you do anything. As much as it might disappoint you to learn that I'm not going to just reprogram your brain for you and then live your life for you. You know what I mean? You have to want to do it. There's responsibility for change, right? Yeah. It was a big part of it.
Tony Robbins is pretty good at, he has some stuff that goes sort of above and beyond traditional NLP around leverage and the idea of like making it hurt So like you can take somebody who's like, I think I kind of want to, but how do you like ramp that up to the level where it's like,
I could have done that like crossroads thing, but he wasn't even into that. You know, like you take it, you're like, oh, go down the road. This is your shitty thing. And your family's crying. And
well, that's my point, is that at some point there are no techniques. Like they have to have a certain degree or a certain amount of desire to change, or there's nothing you can do.
It's leverage.
And sometimes that means you have to let them go, that's the whole point of the family story, is that like, okay, well, and if you ever want to meet your grandchildren, get your shit together, because you're a toxic human being and we're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to have that in our life. We don't need that kind of drama. And I think a lot of people who get into this NLP, and especially the Tony Robbins shit, can tend to be like, no, I can handle anything. That means like it's like pathologically at cause, where someone toxic is in your life and you're taking so much responsibility for, what is this a reflection of me? And at some point you're just like, no, like boundaries. I don't need this.
Yeah. And leverage. Like you said, if you got no leverage, you're going to be trying to lift a fucking manhole with no fingernails.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, or you get the thing, you go over here, you just go boop, and everything goes.
You know? Yeah. Power of leverage. Yeah. All right. That was my anecdote. That was a good conversation. Thanks.
Cool. Yes, my pleasure. So my anecdote was slightly inspired from what a fun guy I was this weekend. And part of it was because I have a client who, you know, because I am not shy or secretive about my love of psychedelics. I have a client who was like, oh yeah, I read some stuff on your website, and I was, you know, someone was talking to me at a party, and they said that they got some great results with psychedelics, and I'd love to talk to you about it. So at the end of our session, he brought it up, and I, you know, for what it's worth, I know you know, but I've studied my psychedelics for a long time, and I'm very familiar and comfortable and love them very much. In a therapeutic way, not just a let's fucking go to a Fish concert and fucking. It's also its own kind of thing. But so I'm talking to this guy, and he tells me about a friend of his who took some mushrooms and had a breakthrough. And I go tell him about it. He said, well, my friend took some mushrooms and he was somewhere wherever he was, and then all of a sudden he sees a dragon and a cloud, and then he realizes, on his own, which is wonderful advice, rather than run from it, rather than fight it, the guy says, hey, dragon, what's up, man? Like, what do you want? Or something to that effect. At which point, the dragon and the cloud sort of merged into whatever it was that the guy needed to have happen, and he had this huge breakthrough in his life, which I don't know the details of. But my client is telling me this, and he goes, so yeah, man, it's like, this is, you know, so are psychedelics good for doing that kind of stuff? And I was like, first of all, yes. And then second of all, in my head, as we've talked about many a time, that's what I do for a living.
Right.
That's what I help people do without the drugs.
Right.
And as an example of that, well, first of all, he and I had already done stuff, but I didn't want to like, you know, that times when we want your mind and you've had similar things. But the next day I had a session with a client who's been having difficulty on camera. Like whatever, as soon as she's red light fever, you know what I mean? It's recording. And we talked a bit about it. And then I did some of the generative language I was talking about, the sort of symbolic language I was talking about. And she said, oh, so when you're in this place where you're comfortable and you're awesome and you're doing things, you're like what? And she's like, oh, well, I'm like confident. And I'm like this. I go, yeah, but when you're confident on this thing, you're like what? And then she went out, and a couple layers down, she went, I'm like a swan. I go, yes. Tell me about the swan. Cool. Now, when you're like the other stuff, when you get red light fever and all this stuff, right? What are you like? Well, I'm like frustrated. I'm like, nah. And then, but yes, but when you're frustrated, like what? And she goes, oh, like an ant. I go, ha. And so now, would the swan like to go over to the ant? Yes, it would. What happens next? Oh, the ant crawls on the swan's head, and then they have a moment, and I'm like, huh? And then what? And then Swan takes off, and it's easy. And now they're together and flying. I was like, yes, and bravo, and she's beautiful for doing all that. And in my head, I'm going, that's the exact fucking same thing that guy just did on mushrooms, but with a couple questions where you just let the conscious mind, all this stuff go.
Yeah.
Which is what psychedelics do. It's like break down the fucking barriers to where your unconscious mind can go, that's a cool story. What if it went over here? And that I was able to actually prove to myself what I already knew, that I blow people's minds psychedelically. I help them reveal their own psyche to themselves through these techniques, through hypnosis, through NLP, and also through having been in it and done it so many times myself, that I can help people do it without the drugs. And that was just yeah, go ahead. I was so tickled.
There's two quotes that pop into my head. One is, hypnosis is psychedelic.
Yeah.
That if you just think about real hypnosis, that's the point of the psychedelics. And it's not to say there isn't value in it. I've found incredible value in exploring those medicines and going to those places. And I've found that it has greatly increased my capacity as a hypnotist and my ability to take people to those places without the substances.
Comfortably, yeah.
The other quote that comes to my mind is, the Salvador Dali quote where he says, I don't do drugs, I am drugs.
Oh, nice. That's like, I am the liquor, Randy. I don't know if you're like Trailer Park Boys, but
no.
Like, you need to lay off the liquor, Mr. Leahy. He's like, I am the liquor, Randy.
So when I think about as a hypnotist, I don't do drugs, I am drugs.
Yeah, totally.
Like what is the psychedelic experience? Hang out with me.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I've always thought that, because I believe my psychedelic explorations are not only a big part of me, but a very useful part of me. And it's something that I've used in my practice. And I've always been like, people ask me, what I offer? I offer my perspective.
Yeah.
And one that doesn't have, so when you're in psychedelic land, if you want to latch onto your ego and be like, I'm not letting go of this thing, you're going to be fucking hating.
That's going to be a miserable time.
But what it makes you do, and I think this is what my quote was about, is it just, you have to go, okay, what if I lose my mind? And I come back as refreshed. What if I let go? What if, as Robert Anton Wilson says, the walls come tumbling down? And then you're like, oh shit, I'm here where I can openly change who I am at will. And that's such a big part of me and my work and my passions, is to you don't have to be who you think you are.
Yeah.
Something that's
by the way, Richard Bandler did a lot of drugs.
Yes.
I'd probably assume that so did John Grinder. Fucking Milton Erickson used to hang out with Aldous Huxley, who wrote The Doors of Perception. I remember reading in the Hypnotic Patterns of Milton H. Erickson, MD, there was something in there about all the work that Huxley and Erickson had done. Huxley's house burned down at one point, and they had pages and pages and pages of books that they talked about the experiences between the similarities between the hypnotic state. And Erickson hypnotized Aldous Huxley, and he was writing about how similar it was to his experiences on mescaline and shit like that. I mean, these are the godfathers of. So this stuff has been intimately connected for a long time.
Right.
So for those of you, those hypnotists who are like, drugs are bad, okay, well, yeah, they're dangerous. Yeah, drugs are like chainsaws. Yes, you can hurt yourself with it, but they can also be incredibly useful. You can also juggle them. Yeah, that might be how I live my life a little bit.
Yeah, I think psychedelics make you more of what you already are. And if you are not grounded as a person, if your life is based on stress and lies and in lack of integrity, when the shit starts getting weird, that starts going to come up. And so it's setting all that.
Well, we're in a new renaissance.
True.
We're in a new renaissance of psychedelics right now. There are 3 new institutes, not just studies, institutes that have opened in the United States for the first time in 45, 50 years that are dedicated to research on psychedelics and the therapeutic value and application of them. So
people were doing 50 fucking years ago when it was legal.
The problem is we're missing 50 years of real rigorous research on how to do it safely and effectively because they got categorized with other actually dangerous and harmful substances. Yeah.
So that's my
soapbox.
My anecdote.
All right. Quote time.
Quote time.
Okay. So I'm going old school right now. One of my all-time favorite books on hypnosis and NLP, Transformations by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Have you read this one, dude?
I have.
Neuro-linguistic programming and the structure of hypnosis. So for those of you listening, if you have not read this one, it's hard to find, but holy shit, is it great. So I've always wanted to, it's basically a transcription of a 3-day hypnosis training that Bandler and Grinder did. And I've always wanted to, just like as an homage, do this training. Like obviously it'd be ripping off their shit, but it's so freaking good. And I wish we had a recording of it because like I've never, all the other stuff I've ever seen. We should. All the other stuff I've ever seen Bandler and Grinder do, I don't think any of it is as good as I imagine this to be when I imagine myself in the audience. And that's what's so awesome about it is that you read the book and you can let the book hypnotize you. There are a few books like that on this subject.
You think these guys are doing any drugs?
Yeah, right. Okay, so anyway, fucking great book. Check it out. It's worth your time. And here's the quote that I read. It's actually 2 sections. I'm going to do one and then I'll bump over to the other one. It's specifically about the differences between generative and remedial change. So generative change doesn't mean you want to quit smoking, lose weight, or get over your problems. I call those remedial changes. Generative change means you'd like to be able to do something more exquisitely, or you'd like to learn something new. It's not that you want to change something you do badly, but that you want to improve something that you already do well. And then I'm skipping over to the other page. Usually, if you make enough generative changes, you will inadvertently wipe out lots of remedial problems. If you concentrate on making yourself better in an area where you are already good, very often other problems will be taken care of spontaneously. I have found that to be incredibly true. This is one of the reasons why my work with people is focused on the distinction between coaching and therapy. That when I think about coaching, I think about results-oriented forward movement. That you are trying to make tangible, measurable shifts in a positive direction. And in the pursuit of those goals, of those shifts and changes, you will find that a whole bunch of the things that if you went to go see a therapist, that those would be the focus, that those just melt, they disappear. Now, there are many ways that you can pursue generative change, but one of the simplest ones is learn to juggle.
Yeah.
Or something like learn something that you're going to get better at. Yeah. Meditation, yoga,
whatever,
play the piano, anything, build a business.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
There's some magical key to shifting your focus away from your problems.
Yeah.
Even from like an operant conditioning behavioral psychology perspective, that when you're focused on the problem, you are inadvertently reinforcing that problem.
Exactly.
And you start to ignore the problem and just be like, yeah, I know. Because there's this voice in your head that's like, oh, look at all these things you're terrible at. And you're like, yeah, I know. I'm going to focus on this one thing here that I'm kicking ass at, and I'm going to kick more ass at that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's totally right. And it reminds me of a lot of different things like quantum linguistics. I don't know what it's called, another thing. It's like, well, what aren't you thinking about when you're thinking about that? Like, what are all the things that aren't fucked up in your life? When aren't you depressed?
Yeah.
You know what? When aren't I depressed? It's like, did you ever see I Heart Huckabees?
Oh, yes.
So good, right? I actually said to a client this week, here's another side anecdote. I actually said to a client, how are you not yourself? She's like, I'm not myself. I'm like, how are you not yourself? How am I not myself? How am I not myself? It's such a great thing. But yeah, like what aren't you focusing on when you're focusing on how fucked up everything is? I totally agree.
Highest recommendations for that movie, folks.
Oh, yeah, so
I Heart Huckabees. That's literally what it's called. So good.
I saw it and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is a movie I wish I wrote. And it's the same thing where like the ability to focus on something bad or going wrong is good. Having all of your energy focused on everything that's fucked up and wrong is catastrophizing and is bad, and you live a miserable life and everything's going to suck. Yeah. And you said, if you just focus on making something good better, right, all the other shit will kind of go away. And I couldn't agree more. And it's so much of that is about identity. Like when you focus on the person that you actually are, like the parts of you that are dedicated, indulgent, and loving, and caring, whatever the fuck it is that it is, you just do that. Like, oh, does cigarette smoking have a thing in my life, or whatever the negative thing that I was doing? It just doesn't match this person that I actually am. That's not how am I not myself. That's how I'm not myself. How am I myself? How can I be more myself? But I think that's a really good way to put it. And what is it? The rising tide.
Yep. I was just thinking that exactly.
And I mean, I've seen things where it's like even with values work, which is part of the question we have today. When someone's number one value changes, all that other shit doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not important to you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I did shit in high school that I don't care about anymore. You know what I mean? I used to watch football. I don't fucking care. It's not hard for me to not watch football because I don't care about it.
Yeah.
It's not important to me anymore. So I go to things, or, whatever it is, going out, or things that might have been good at one time became less than good. Do they match the good thing that I want to make better? Mm-hmm. And may I say, probably for the fourth podcast in a row, fuck perfection. Fuck perfection so sideways and up and down. Because that's pointless. Make something good better. Fuck perfection. There's my bumper sticker.
Yeah.
So yes. Anything else on that? Because I think this book, I could literally just pull out anything from here and be like, yes, please.
The generative versus remedial change to me is like it's a fundamental paradigm shift when it comes to working with clients. That I don't do remedial work in isolation anymore. The way that I look at it is I'll go work on a problem if that problem is getting in the way of something else that we're trying to accomplish or achieve, some goal that we're in pursuit of. If there's a thing like you're procrastinating or whatever, but I don't take clients to fix procrastination. Right. The procrastination has to be a thing that becomes part of the motivation for getting over it.
Right. And generative change is worth charging a lot of money for.
Exactly. That's the thing, that once you get that ball rolling, 6 months from now, where are you going to be? A year from now, where are you going to be? 2 years from now, who are you going to be? Exactly.
Because that's like, oh, what'd you do for that? Anything. Great. Well, that's what I'm guaranteeing. Cool. What? Wait, you're guaranteeing that? Yeah. Cool. You got nothing to lose.
It makes me think about the 8th circuit brain thing. Like that to me is what I think of when I think of generative change, that we're literally talking about evolving you as a human being into something more.
Everything better.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, cool. Your turn.
So because my anecdote was about psychedelics and stuff, and I couldn't really be much of a bigger fan of my friend Timothy Leary here.
Timothy Leary.
Neuro-linguistic, with Robert Anton Wilson as a forward. This because so much of what he did was about the politics of your neurology, right? It's
funny. Robert Anton Wilson wrote the foreword to the book that I had last time too.
Okay, well,
he's very connected. He's the patron saint of living NLP.
I mean, for sure. So neuropolitik, the politics of your own neurology, of your thoughts. Like, why is mushrooms illegal? They grow out of the ground. You eat them. They do something to your mind, but that's illegal. No one robs on mushrooms. No one rapes on mushrooms. But this guy wrote this book in San Luis Obispo prison in the spring of '73 when he was, before he escaped prison, or maybe it was after. So I just found this quote. It says, because as we all know that he worked at Harvard University as a psychologist, working with psychedelics and changing the mind, right? Because it's not like, take this acid and your mind will change. It's take the acid and do the work, find the route. Find the forgiveness, find the understanding, find the letting go. It's not just about take this drug and see some swirly colors and your life will change. It's about getting in touch with the deepest part of you and letting the rest go. It says, I was convinced that mental illness could be cured, that drastic limitations on human intellectual and emotional function were caused by inflexible thought programs, imprinted and conditioned neural circuits, which created and preserved artificial states of perceived reality and poor mental performance. That makes sense? Did I read that right? I was convinced that mental illness could be cured, that drastic limitations on human intellectual and emotional function were caused by inflexible thought programs, imprinted and conditioned neural circuits, which created and preserved artificial states of perceived reality and poor mental performance.
To me, that's like NLP in a nutshell. Exactly. Like what he just described is NLP. Like this is the point, folks.
Right? And that's our whole thing. It's like having flexible thought programs, right? And how we are imprinted. We're conditioned. Our neural circuits are conditioned, which create and then are preserved artificial states of perceived reality, right? Everybody thinks what they think is real. Yeah. And then you end up with poor mental performance unless you're optimizing all this stuff. So what do you got to say on that topic other than yes?
The first thought that comes to mind is a quote that I saw, or a video I think that Jason Silva released this last week. Speaking of paradoxes, he was talking about this idea of like openness and flow, and or not flow being the sweet spot, but like openness and closed or rigid. And he was talking about the idea that if you're going to be creative, if you're going to be in a creative space, most people think you need to be open to everything. But if you're so open that you can't get anything done, if you're so surrendered and so on the yin side of things that you're just blown by the winds of change in the moment, you can't get anything done. But on the flip side, if you're so disciplined and rigid that there's no openness and spontaneity, then you get stuck in these thought patterns and nothing interesting is going to come out of it anyway. So to me, again, the place where NLP and spirituality overlap is in these paradoxes, in these places where it's flow is defined as the place where challenge and skill meet. The perfect balance of enough challenge that it keeps you engaged and interested, and you have enough skill to meet that challenge so that you're not constantly tripping over yourself. And finding that flow. I mean, that's Jason Silva's thing, is finding that flow and spending as much time of the day as possible in that state.
Right. God, but then, so talking about having too much flow, man.
Dude, I knew you were going to bring this up, and I was like, do I want it?
You fucking brought it up. So I went to a Jason Silva speech, and I paid for the VIP fucking up close and personal, meet him afterwards thing. What a clusterfuck this whole production was. It was an embarrassment to the consciousness community and really turned me off of a lot of things. Although I really appreciated everything he said. The line was down the block half hour after it was supposed to have started. It was everything went late. There was no boundaries. Anyone who didn't pay for the VIP thing, meet and greet, just charged the stage. And the people who did do the meet and greet didn't get. So everybody was like, yeah, totally, man. Like, whatever. Like, there can be, which is what, going back to the people who put on this juggling thing. Dude, this guy walks around going, 10 minutes till the next thing. And like 5 minutes till the next thing. Like, it's on point. And we all fuck off hard as we can within these limits and boundaries so that we know where we are and that we know we can lose our shit. But there has to be a balance between the two. And so as far as Jason Silva, there's that. And as far as the rest, I mean, that's what we do. We help people. That's what we kind of call brainwashing, is taking those artificial states of perceived reality, like what you think is like Robert Anton Wilson's big on the reality tunnels and the whole thing. We take people's ability to create reality and give them the key again. Like, oh, you did that once, and now you have this. But it's time to take your put on your big boy pants. You know what I mean? It's like time to do that again for yourself. And that's what I think brainwashing is. When we say we take the little pin and we put it in the hole in the back of your brain and go, oh, wow, right? You can change. You don't necessarily need living LSD podcast, which should be another one we should do. This week, the Living NLP podcast is the Living LSD podcast. But you don't need those things. You can, with the right rapport, and if one is ready, take a dragon and make a cloud and do the thing with the swan and the ant and actually generate change for yourself. Yeah.
Most people mistakenly believe that we believe things because they are true, but it's far more accurate to say things are true because we believe them, at least most of the time. Yes. And changing those beliefs, even when there's a part of your brain going, yeah, but it's not true. If you can learn to let that go and be like, yeah, I know, and you just switch those beliefs, they trickle down into your manifest reality.
Yeah. Amen.
All right. We're kind of running a little long here. So you want to do one question?
I have one question.
You got one?
Quickly.
I have a long list, but let's just do one question.
All right. How do you change a value? Move it up the list.
That's the question?
This is off the TEP Facebook, whatever page. How do you change a value? Parentheses, move it up the list.
Okay, so move it up the list was not your answer to the question.
No. Yeah, right. Just write it up there.
Move it up the list. Next. You want to go first or you want me to answer it?
Well, one of them is like the stock answer, which I know that, I'll give the stock answer.
Go for it.
Which will be some modalities, right? But now maybe I'll not give the stock answer. So some modality shift is how I was taught to do it. You go, what does this mean? Is it here? What if you brought it here? What if you turned it up? What if you took this one and made it down? Notice what happened. But what came to me with when I saw that, which it's funny you brought it up, not to steal your point, because I've been working so much with generative change and generative language, I don't do that anymore. I haven't taken, like, once someone gets the change, once someone has the release and the aha and the brain is washed. Yeah. And I go, what are your values now? They're like, boop, they're completely different now.
That's exactly the point I was going to make.
I knew you were going to say it.
No. The point I was going to make is that values to me are they're much better used as a convincer of shift.
Totally.
Rather than a method of causing the shift.
Yes.
That you use them as a way to elicit your values, do some work, re-elicit them, and then they discover, oh my God, I actually don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah, and it's such a great before and after picture. Because I'm like, all this is away. It's usually all very away. And then we do usually after a breakthrough. It's like, so what's important to you now? Well, this, and this. Really? It's like, so you're saying it's true for you, right? Yeah. I go, well, look at these two things. Look at, like, there's your breakthrough. It's exactly what you said. It's a convincer. Yeah. Then if they're like, well, I want to take this and move it there, maybe, but I've never had anybody even do that. Like,
so then to expand on the question, since we're saying, like, how do you change a value, move it up the list? We're saying, don't worry about moving it up the list, but there are ways that you change value. So what are the typical things you're going to do in between the first and the second elicitation?
Well, release the negative emotional stuff to
so timeline work.
Get them in touch with what they actually want and why.
Yeah.
And as far as values go, a big thing that obviously was taught to me by you was, don't tell me what you think they should be. Tell me what they are now.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, well, it's freedom and it's peace and it's goodness. I go, no. What's important to you about your family now? Oh, well, they fucking annoy the shit out of me and I can't stand them and I want them to get,
right.
Hatred and resentment. Good. Let those be real for you because they are. Don't deny that. Let it be what it is. Then you can change from it.
Yeah. I have a couple of additional elicitation processes that I do too. So, as you learned it, and depending on what school of NLP. You do your standard elicitation, then you do elicitation from threshold. So it's like, what would cause, if all these things were present, what would cause you to leave?
Right.
And then I think there's another one in there. I don't remember the other elicitation, but one of them that
calls you to stay, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's the one that follows up with the threshold. I think there was another one. Oh, it was motivation strategy. So can you remember a time when you were extremely motivated? What happened right before? And then that's usually a value. Right. The other one that I've done that I got from Mark Cunningham is he likes to say, if your values are what you spend your time on, then you should elicit your values from your schedule. So literally look back at your last 30 days and you say, what have you been spending your time on? Right. And you can do this contextually, or you can just do it in your life. But if you ask somebody, what are your values? You will almost never hear them say something like entertainment. But if you then look at how they spend their time,
right?
What are they do? How many hours a day are you spending watching TV or browsing the internet or whatever?
What if entertainment was really a distraction?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, but you just basically say, you look at the time that they spend and you say, I spend 4 hours, 5 hours a day watching TV. Exactly. And then you say, what are you getting out of that? For what purpose are you doing that? Oh, I find it entertaining. Okay, great. Well, is entertainment a value? Clearly it is. Right. And who knows where that comes from? Like, it could be a number of different reasons why. I mean, I'm launching a new podcast tomorrow.
What? Now you telling me?
I'm cheating on you with another podcast. I'm starting another podcast tomorrow that is about how to maximize the value that you get out of watching movies and TV. That most people think of that as a vice, that they're like, oh, I spend too much time watching movies and TV. And I find it's probably true. But I find that it is possible to change the way that you watch movies and TV, and it can actually become one of the most valuable uses of your time. This becomes a spiritual practice, but it depends on how you're doing it. And when you said the distraction thing, yes, a lot of people are doing it to distract themselves from other stuff. But the thing you're doing isn't the significant thing. It's what's the value that it's fulfilling.
All right, well,
so I like that as an elicitation. So then as far as what to do to change it, focus on the generative change, and the values will probably shift all by themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. That might have been pretty in an abstract way to answer that, but it's fine. Hopefully that was valuable for whoever's listening. By the way, we had a couple people tune in. I don't know if anybody's still here, but Adrienne was watching. Hey, Adrienne. And Linda Lyons popped in too and said, hi, I have to go back and watch this. She said, thanks.
That's cool.
So we're all good. Oh, I think Adrienne is still watching because she just said tee-hee.
Tee-hee. Well, then I'm going to show you one more thing.
Okay.
Which is this.
Whoa.
These are golden ratio calipers.
Oh, no way. Oh, shit. I get it.
Like, this is golden ratio.
Oh, my gosh.
And so you do it with all these other things. Like, is this my pen? No, shit. But watch this.
Oh, dude. Oh, you got the coolest fucking toys, man.
I do. So anyways, that was fun. You are geometry.
Rad.
Live it.
Where did you get it? I love the curves and all that. That's how it manifests.
Who I take my geometry courses through, he made them. He built it.
That is
rad. He's got a thing called Secrets in Plain Sight, where he goes on Google Earth and he looks at all the old like the pyramids and like even all the way up to Paris, and how everything is like the witchcraft of geomancy, and everything is all, the geometry that they're putting into shit, and how much it is there. And like,
dude, that is rad.
Come on, get it. But even little things like, so you find these in like logos of corporations and stuff. But like even this pen here, that purple line, it's hard for me to show you.
I see it.
That purple line right there is at the, is right there. You know what I mean? Like they designed this pen. Somebody used the divine ratio to put this purple line at 5.
Well, and my argument would be that these types of things are very Darwinian in the sense that they might not have even known that they were doing that, but that they were building it, and the way that it looks most pleasing happens to be within the golden ratio.
You don't need to put that line there, but it's like yes. So yes, and if you look at so many logos of corporations and stuff, they're like, bing, they know, like people have known, painters have known, all that stuff. But it's fun. So you can go out and look at flowers and look at like, you know, like your hand or whatever. It's I'm not convinced that everybody who's designing shit is aware of it consciously, but that it doesn't matter because it's sort of like the Joseph Campbell myth structure, that it's like, even if somebody's never heard of Joseph Campbell, has no idea, if they've digested movies and stories, and then they tell the stories that survive are the ones that follow the structure that exists in our unconscious. The golden ratio is that structure manifested geometrically, and it shows up in nature. It shows up in your fucking fingers. That's super rad. All right, man.
All right, man. Okay, I think we're good. This was a long one today.
Too many rumblings and ramblings. Get me talking about psychedelics and NLP and hypnosis.
Yeah, it was fun though. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll see you next week.
Thanks, anyone who cared.
Later, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Peace, love, and NLP.
Yep.